Hey, what is going on, everyone? This is your boy Tanveer Syed, the Bengal Dragon. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons, as all your support will really help this channel grow through the YouTube algorithms, and I will also go a long way in helping a legally blind YouTube content creator remain motivated to continue making a variety of different type of videos in this channel. Today, I'm going to review Resident Evil Degeneration. I have seen other reviews of this movie, and it became apparent to me that almost everyone, and I mean almost everyone, missed the other story that was being told in this movie entirely. This is especially true in the West, where subtle body language storytelling is not understood that well, and unfortunately is something that has to be spoon fed. That is why this video is going to present in more detail the other story that every reviewer that I have come across has missed when it comes to covering Resident Evil Degeneration. And of course, it's going to be with evidence. I don't do anything of this kind without presenting evidence. Now, I understand I am going against a long established narrative, especially in the West, but I believe that my analysis and discoveries gives Claire Redfield a lot more depth, as a result of which it elevates her above nearly every other protagonist that you can imagine in the Resident Evil series. However, a few Resident Evil fans did get it. And to them, I sincerely thank you for all your support and open mindedness. The other story I was referring to has to do with the mental state of Claire Redfield. And the focus on the mental state of Claire Redfield has been requested by YouTuber Samuel Dawson. Thank you so very much for your support. That is why I made the opening of the video the way I did, as this video is going to focus a lot more on Claire's story that everyone missed again. And if you've seen my Death Island review, you will know that everyone keeps missing the story with Claire Redfield. To me, it became apparent that most of the Resident Evil fans, even the larger channels included, are brainwashed to believe that in Resident Evil there is no in depth storytelling. And this is especially true when it comes to Claire Redfield, the one character who is actually put there to tell you the character story. And you have seen this in Death Island. Death Island really tried to tell the character story. And this is why I actually enjoyed that movie. And I've seen some people classify what I do as fan theory. See, I don't do fan theory. Okay. I don't like fan theory. What I do is critical analysis, something I've been doing academically since 2009. So this is my default setting. Let me give you some examples of fan theory. Kratos being the god of death, that is fan theory. Kratos actually being Jormungandr in God of War 2018, that is fan theory. The sniper Quiet from Metal Gear Solid The Phantom Pain actually being Chico, who underwent a sex change operation, and just because the color of their eyes are similar, Quiet has to be Chico. That is fan theory. My point being, just because something is not stated, it doesn't necessarily make everything fan theory. I like to call what I'm doing evidence based discoveries. So, with all due respect, which that taunts, what I am doing is evidence based and is not a stretch of anything. Just to emphasize my point, let me present something that you see in some of the earlier Resident Evil games and with visual media in general. There is something called storytelling through body language. In the Resident Evil series, you actually see perhaps the least of this done with Leon and Wesker, and the most of this done through Claire. But I feel that the majority of the Resident Evil fans are brainwashed not to focus on this outside of the horror context. This storytelling through body language, if executed right, can actually determine success from failure, regardless of the quality of the content at times. You heard me bring up Final Fantasy X many times, where the most memorable aspect is actually the love story between a village girl and a hologram who is the son of another hologram. They did body language storytelling there too, coupled with dialogue, albeit very bad and annoying dialogue. I'll go into more details about the great execution of Final Fantasy X's stupid story in a future video. However, here is a game that did great storytelling through body language and no dialogue in their CG cutscenes. Do you remember Final Fantasy VIII? The story is so freaking stupid, but it is considered a classic. And what do people remember the most? Not the plans for world domination through time traveling witches and sorceresses, not the feud between universities that can fly, but the freaking love story and that song, Eyes on Me. But when it comes to presentation, there is a lot of story being told through body language and presentation of the cutscene alone, because their CG cutscenes did not have any spoken dialogues. This body language storytelling is something you see in Japanese media all the time. And people must remember Resident Evil is a Japanese media product translated for the American audience. The point of all this blabbering that I've been doing is just to let you guys know to please focus on the body language and facial expression when it comes to Claire Redfield in Resident Evil Degeneration, and if possible, in future canonical appearances as well, because you will see the other story. That coupled with the dialogue and the tone of delivery. Remember, people, this is a CG movie, so everything in this movie was animated with a purpose. I will even help you guys with some text indicators shown on screen. By this point, I have seen Degeneration, seen the cutscenes and gameplay of Revelations 2, and seen Death Island. You know, the 3 times Claire Redfield shows up canonically in the original timeline. And I have determined that Capcom has an established pattern when it comes to making CODE Veronica references most of the time. For this, you have to consider CODE Veronica X and Survivor 2 as one unit. But for some reason, almost all of the Resident Evil fans actually missed this entirely. And yes, I have seen even some of the Reddit forums. Yes, I finally went into what some call the cesspool called Reddit. Okay, just for investigation purposes. And yes, people miss this. But as blind man sees many things, blind man will elaborate the pattern set by Capcom when it comes to referencing CODE Veronica most of the time. One, most of these references happen in Claire's presence. Two, when they happen in Claire's presence, these references only make sense to Claire. 3. These references are usually in the presence or absence of what Claire does or says that does not make any sense at first glance. But when you think a little deeper about it, it all connects to something related to losing Steve. You will see what I mean later on in this video. So, this movie takes place in 2005 in the original timeline. 1 year after the events of Resident Evil 4, as far as Leon is concerned, 7 years after the event of CODE Veronica, as far as Claire is concerned, and 7 years after the events of Raccoon City, as far as both of them are concerned. For a full breakdown of the story, I'm very certain you can find other videos that will break down exactly what happens. Me, I'm here to just briefly go over that. Yes, I am going to briefly go over the story of this movie and some of its hilarious stupidity that I've come across, but I'm also going to focus on the story everyone missed as well. So, to help you guys with the other story that everyone missed, I'm going to start a count. Okay, this count basically are the CODE Veronica references I caught in this movie, and specifically the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. I am very certain if you're an open minded person, even you will finally come to this agreement that Claire is not strong enough to come to terms with Steve's death. Not only after 13 years, but if you've seen Death Island, after 17 years, she still has not come to terms with his death. I already covered some of the references in previous videos, so I'm not going to go into too much explanation of those here. But there are some new ones, and I will have to explain exactly how I got to that conclusion that it is indeed a CODE Veronica reference. So if you can't tell already by the YouTube timer, this is going to be a very long video, but please bear with it because there is a lot that people missed, and I will have to elaborate on almost all of it. I'm going to add chapters for your convenience of following. I'm also going to break this video down and upload shorter segments of this video. Just an experiment I'll be running on my channel. So in the pre-title scenes, we get a recap. Raccoon City is destroyed, Umbrella stock crash and Umbrella goes out of business. International terrorists emerge who can use the virus. A new company called Wilpharma forms, and with the help of government support, opens up a research facility in Harvardville. Wilpharma also conducts research in India, and as a result of this, Terra Save protests and causes Wilpharma's stock to decline. Post-title, we see Claire Redfield arrive at Harvardville Airport with a sleep-deprived look on her face and a luggage and purse that we don't see again after the first act of this movie. And come on, Harvardville in Degeneration, Panamistan in Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, a city named after a university, and a country named after a bankrupt and right now non-existent airlines? What's next? A biohazard in a city called Yaleburg or a country called Toys R Usabad? You trying to be funny? We also see some of the main characters in this movie apart from Claire. Ronnie, Ronnie's aunt, Senator Davis, Frederick Downing, and Curtis Miller, who we see in the pre-title segment of this movie. Watch carefully. In this first scene, we can tell that Frederick Downing is up to something, considering how abruptly he leaves.
This is a reminder from the airport to keep your
Well,
at all times. Thank you.
I'm weary of waiting. I'm going to grab a taxi. Good day, ladies.
We then see an outbreak in the airport and also a simultaneous outbreak on a passenger plane headed for Harvardville Airport. Within the first 12 minutes, there are actually 4 references to the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. First, it's at the very first appearance, where she refers to her new work assignments as her new boyfriends.
You look tired.
Blame my new boyfriend. He won't let me get any sleep.
Boyfriend, huh? Is that what you're calling the WHO report now?
FDA, actually.
Second, her unusual anger towards anyone who even jokes about biohazards.
This is too much.
Third, Claire getting stunned and somewhat paralyzed when the senator begged her for help in the middle of a biohazard.
Please, help me.
In fact, the movie shows you that Claire actually first locates Ronnie, then runs into Curtis Miller and gets distracted, then locates Ronnie again. Claire actually locates Ronnie 2 times, but that interaction, seemingly benign with the senator, touched such a sensitive nerve that she actually lost focus of looking for a helpless little child in the middle of a biohazard. And Capcom spent the entirety of Claire's scenarios in Resident Evil 2 establishing her caring nature, especially towards a helpless child in a biohazard. So the only way that she can get derailed from such a strong instinct of hers is that if that interaction surfaced a very painful memory.
Please, help me.
Attention.
Claire! Help me!
And fourth, Claire's traumatized reaction when she sees the zombies exit the plane compared to a fear-induced reaction the last 2 times she faced zombies in a biohazard.
No way. This can't be happening. Also, notice her facial expression. It looks like she's getting ready to cry.
strongly suggesting that the suppressed memory that surfaced is one that brings extreme sorrow. And the only thing that made her cry last time was losing Steve. Also, let me point out something that this is actually bad directing, because right before the part where they show you Claire's traumatized reaction, they show zombies coming out of an emergency door of a plane. Okay, now if people are going to watch it with an open mind, some of them might actually start laughing at the fact that a zombie knows how to open an emergency door in a plane. And also, this is a very unique plane that, given all the fuel it's carrying, given all the sparks it caused crashing into the airport, the plane did not explode. So people are going to be laughing at that instead of focusing on Claire's body language and facial expression, whereas Capcom probably wanted the fans to focus on Claire's body language and facial expression at this part. The CG graphics in this movie are comedically bad. Big heads and small hands. Rani or her aunt are not voiced by Indians, and they even use research in India as a plot point. So we see Harvardville police, aided by Leon Kennedy, get into the act. And the woman, Angela Miller, is voiced by Laura Bailey. And that guy, Greg.
And now, even Pandora's box is mine! Would you have me use it against Olympus itself?
That's right, voiced by Stephen Bloom, the voice of Ares from God of War. Laura Bailey, the great Laura Bailey, absolutely nailed it in this movie. She was the best voice performer by a long shot compared to everyone else in this movie. I also like the touch at this part where Leon doesn't have any headgear, but Angela has a riot gear helmet, probably thinking that a zombie can bash you in the head with a club or something. So we see Claire Redfield walk outside holding an umbrella branded umbrella as a weapon, looking for help.
Never saw this coming. No answer. Never a good sign.
Get down!
The Claire-Leon reunion scene is so forced. First of all, how the fuck did she miss these slow-moving zombies when she just peeked in that direction? And also, how the fuck did she miss Leon when she just ran from the direction that Leon came from?
Can't you get rid of them any faster?
They're starting to gather over here.
Well then, you should have asked Leon for a gun to at least protect that little girl, huh? Or why don't you use that umbrella? Ink Ribbon thinks you're a badass just because you hold an umbrella and never actually use it. Just messing, Ink Ribbon. After that so-called badass gunplay scene from Claire, whereas her gunplay scene in CODE Veronica was even more badass, considering that in CODE Veronica she was facing more people with bigger guns. In Degeneration, like an idiot, she hands the gun back? Why did she hand the gun back? Even other reviewers have brought up this stupidity. And by the way, I'm sorry, Ink Ribbon, Claire Redfield never uses that umbrella even once. She could have been holding a wiffle bat instead. It wouldn't have made a difference. So no, holding that umbrella does not make her a badass.
I can't stand kids. They're a real pain in the ass.
Bastard! That little girl will probably have nightmares for the rest of her life because of you.
This is a reference to Resident Evil Survivor 2, which was triggered by Resident Evil CODE Veronica. Additionally, this line coming out of Claire Redfield specifically is very telling. Remember, Capcom intentionally made Resident Evil Survivor 2, a game that was released for the arcade, have a canonical relevance specifically in the context of CODE Veronica and immediately what happened to Claire right after surviving CODE Veronica. When they ported the arcade to home console, the only person, the only protagonist amongst all the protagonists, at least in the classic games, who has this treatment, have her dream turn into a game of canonical relevance. And this was intentionally done by Capcom. Why? To tell a character story. They didn't need to put the canonical relevance. They didn't need to put that opening text that this is Claire's nightmare. But they intentionally put that content in there for a storytelling purpose. In addition to the mistranslations and whatnot, correctly pointed out by Witchtaunter, I would add that Claire never calls Steve bro. If you've seen my previous videos, you know exactly what I'm talking about and what context I'm referring to. But everyone, have you actually read Monologue of Claire? It's available online. Everyone, read it very, very carefully, both the original and the Japanese, which you can basically copy paste into Google Translate. All right. Yeah, there are some errors, but still, just read that very carefully. You will notice there is a theme. The theme is about an island, surviving the island, a nightmare on the island, surviving with Steve, escaping from the island, and about fear and sorrow and confusion about why she has so much fear and sorrow and why she's even crying when Steve and her just survived the island and is escaping in the Harrier. Furthermore, it is referred to as a nightmare. Now, according to Survivor 2, if Steve survived, where is the nightmare part? A nightmare is something undesirable, something that is filled with fear or sorrow or some other type of very negative emotion. Claire surviving with Steve, escaping in the Harrier. Where is the nightmare part? Why is that a nightmare? Pause the video, read Monologue of Claire, and then from this point, resume the video. Did you read it? Here is the answer. The nightmare part of the dream is the fact that Steve stops responding because her brain is probably telling her that dead people don't respond. But she is in denial of it. Read the monologue. She thinks that Steve dying is an alternate reality and Steve surviving is the actual reality. So the nightmare is that Claire and Steve escape the island in a Harrier, but as soon as the Harrier starts flying, Steve dies. Now you understand, Claire of all people saying that line, it has a lot more weight because she's saying it as if from her own experience. Leon was right there as well. Leon heard what the senator said. Leon does not act that way. All Leon does is clench his fist in anger. We then see Claire getting some medical attention, locating some Wilpharma trucks driving the wrong way, and she goes to investigate. We also see a Resident Evil 4 reference in the form of an Ingrid Hunnigan cameo.
What the hell is going on? Why are Wilpharma drugs being brought here?
Keep this scene in mind. This scene is actually a sign, a depressing sign of Claire's mental state. It will become evident in a little bit.
He's the one who developed a vaccine for the virus which you, in particular, are so familiar with.
You mean the infection in the terminal?
You thought that was Wilpharma engineered, didn't you? Utterly ridiculous. An inoculation. That's what they've been working on. A way to prevent further outbreaks.
But
Claire, it's true.
you knew?
Yes. I didn't think its use would be sanctioned this quickly.
Then the human testing that took place in India...
An attack by terrorists that somehow got hold of the T-virus. All the terrorist members of the group supported by General Grande were infected, so we don't know the details. The U.S. government obtained permission from the appropriate Indian authorities to administer the T-virus vaccine to the nearby communities. The vaccine was secretly developed by Wilpharma. It was a success. The infection rate was kept as minimal as possible.
Why the hell didn't you break out the vaccine for this? If we'd been inoculated before we entered the terminal, Greg would still be...
Inoculation would have been entirely possible had Terra Save not backed us into an adversarial corner. Had we been able to follow proper procedure, as outlined in the original schedule, the government medical stockpile could have been shipped anywhere in the US within 12 hours.
Oh my god. It's all our fault.
Here's the problem with Frederick Downing's explanation. Leon knew of the vaccine. The US government knew of the vaccine. They knew Wilpharma was working on it and had positive results. They actually had success in creating the vaccine. Then why didn't they vaccinate everyone involved in the rescue operation, including Leon? Furthermore, Leon told all of this in front of Claire, but Claire was too stupid at first glance to see through Frederick's flimsy explanation. Claire actually starts blaming herself when she could have immediately asked, why didn't Wilpharma contact Terra Save and tell them that, listen, you need to get off our backs? We are actually working on a T-virus vaccine. Do you think a company like Terra Save will not be interested in championing a T-virus vaccine? And Claire, of all people, would not get behind that 100%. Also, Frederick told in front of everyone that the government stockpile could have been transported to anywhere necessary within 12 hours. Meaning that regardless of Terra Save's protests causing the stock of Wilpharma to shrink or decline, Wilpharma had a lot of government support and government funding, enough to make government level stockpiles. That means what Terra Save was doing had no effect on Wilpharma. So the fact that Terra Save's efforts had no effect on creating a vaccine that Wilpharma and Frederick Downing didn't even bother telling Terra Save, who could have benefited the most from such a vaccine and could have distributed it out to people to help them. It is obvious that Frederick Downing was hiding something, and Claire didn't see it.
It's all our fault. We just ended up making things worse.
You chose the role of rescuer rather than fighter like me. You chose a path that your brother and I couldn't follow. You weren't wrong.
Leon, thank you. We just ended up making things worse.
You chose the role of rescuer.
Leon, thank you.
Go back and listen very carefully. There is a bit of an extra shiver when Claire says, Leon, thank you. This is a subtle reference, and I've touched on this in my previous video. The last time Claire tried to rescue someone, it was Steve, and she failed. Also, keep this specific scene locked away for a future video of mine when I compare CODE Veronica X and Game of Oblivion from Darkside Chronicles. Which brings me to Claire Redfield's character in this movie. She seems to have an extra level of anger towards anything biohazard related, even to the point where she's interrogating a truck driver why that truck is there, as if the truck driver knows why he is told to drive the truck there. Frederick Downing played her like a fiddle, but through my psychological analysis, considering that both Leon and Claire have survived 2 biohazards each by this point, it is evident that Claire is doing all this Terra Save work mostly to help others, but part of it is actually as an act of atonement or retribution.
I haven't heard a word from Curtis in 3 years. He lost his wife and child in the Raccoon City tragedy.
At least they gave Curtis Miller a motive, and maybe they should have put him in Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil 6 instead of killing him off in this movie. So we see Frederick Downing and Claire Redfield, who is guilt-tripped and now is enthusiastic to help out. Both of them arrive in the Wilpharma research facility. Frederick shows her the details of the facility, and Claire looks very happy. Remember, at this point, Claire thinks that Frederick is an ally of Terra Save and thus a companion to fight against biohazards. This fight against biohazards is all she cares about, and that will become more evident in a moment. I bring this up because I saw a few reviewers be confused by Claire's over positive response at this point. After that scene where Frederick shows Claire the G virus and they have it in that facility, and Claire gets a little nervous, she tries to call Leon. And through her dialogue, she indicates that she doesn't care what happens to Frederick when virus matters are involved.
I've got to tell Leon.
Wait, no, If you do that, what's going to happen to me?
You didn't seem worried about that when you were just telling me everything.
Keep in mind, this is after her believing that due to Terra Save, the vaccine didn't make it to people. So Frederick takes his leave, citing an emergency. Claire tells the news to Leon, and Leon catches immediately that Frederick is up to something, but she doesn't want to believe it.
Steve gave his life to save your stupid ass? No!
But jokes aside, this tells you that Claire Redfield is emotionally invested in Terra Save's work, so much so that it actually impairs her rational thinking. Just look at how enthusiastic Claire looks when she thinks that she's working with Frederick for a common purpose. But the moment she sees the G virus and Frederick's stupid explanation,
You got it on the black market. What did you plan on doing with the G virus?
Create a vaccine. But even the senator couldn't adequately express the threat that she posed to the government. The plans were shelved and remains in level 4 ever since. The senator is a member of the special committee that decided to bomb Raccoon City.
She basically tells us that she doesn't care what happens to Frederick, as she only cares about fighting the virus matters.
What's going to happen to me?
You didn't seem worried about that when you were just telling me everything.
This, saving people from viruses, somehow it means more to her than it means to Leon.
You chose the role of rescuer.
And that's why I think this is an act of redemption or atonement, because she couldn't save the one person that meant everything to her. In one word, her hero.
Look, Claire even doesn't see through the nonsense of a G virus vaccine. Whereas by the time of this movie's ending, there are only 2 victims of the G virus that we know of, and both of them are dead. On top of that, the only survivor who was infected with the G virus has the G virus antidote, not vaccine, okay, antidote in Sherry, and she is with the US government by this point. Fast forwarding just a little bit, towards the end, Claire vehemently defends her position that Frederick has to be the good guy and the senator has to be the bad guy. Even when Leon caught on through the phone call that Frederick was up to something. Claire only believes it when she sees irrefutable evidence, not when others tell her. This blind faith in people who she thinks will help out the cause of Terra Save. And that is why I am making this number 7 of the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. Terra Save's work is her act of redemption, her act of atonement for not being able to save Steve. Hasn't it ever occurred to you that from all of the main protagonists, Claire is the only one who joined an organization that specifically goes to help out victims of biohazard and bioweapons research, when she couldn't save Steve, who was also a victim of biohazards and bioweapons research? And by the way, this is referenced in Resident Evil Revelations 2. Notice when Moira says,
Still no sign of your boyfriend.
to which Claire replies,
He's not my boyfriend.
and Claire is around 31 or 32 years old, okay? Why should she be shy about these things? Moira doesn't care if Neil is her boyfriend or not. And in fact, if you notice the other people who got kidnapped, such as Gabe and Pedro, none of them make this assumption that Claire and Neil are a couple because they know there is nothing romantic between them. Anyways, Moira Burton, who was kidnapped on her first day of work, not even 15 minutes getting to know her colleagues, accuses Neil of something, and Claire defends him strongly.
Shit. Look, there's something I gotta tell you. I noticed something when Neil was with us. His bracelet never changed color. I mean, the living dead were coming at us from all directions. He must have been scared.
No. There's no way. Got it? End of discussion.
And Claire doesn't believe Moira until she sees irrefutable proof of Neil's betrayal. And she does the same thing in Degeneration. She trusts Frederick only in the context of fighting bioweapons research because she showed when fighting virus matters are involved, she is willing to throw Frederick under the bus if it came to it. In fact, after Leon accuses Frederick and Claire defends him, she answers Frederick's office phone and speaks to him.
Is Frederick there?
He just went to go fix the server.
Or he may have gone to go dump the virus.
Couldn't be.
Claire?
There's a call coming from inside the building. Hold on.
Claire.
Frederick, where are you?
In level 4.
Why? You said you were going to the server room.
I saw someone suspicious on my way there and followed him.
And she immediately demands an explanation on why Frederick is somewhere else instead of the server room. As if Frederick owes her an explanation. At first glance, you would think that Claire is treating Frederick like her subordinate. But if you think more deeply about it, this is Claire looking for validation of her own faith in people who she feels will help out the cause of Terra Save, something that is so personal to her. In both cases, Degeneration and Revelations 2, Claire is the last person to see the betrayal. People who are farther attached from the situation, and some of them who are actually farther away, see the betrayal long before Claire sees it. And the same thing with Neil. Once she sees irrefutable proof, Claire says that he sold Terra Save out. Not her out, but Terra Save specifically by name out. When the Claire-Neil boss fight starts, she says,
Neil! I trusted you! Terra Save was built to save people! It's in the goddamn name! Neil! Where did we go wrong?
Did you notice she never once says, I loved you or how could you betray me? It's all about I trusted you and then Terra Save reason, Terra Save reason, Terra Save reason. For her, betraying Terra Save is betraying her trust because she cannot fathom anything going wrong with her personal cause and her personal drive through Terra Save as an act of redemption. So a person dedicates him or herself to a cause to the point that this person does not see betrayal until it is too late and becomes actually so much emotionally invested in the cause that it leaves this person open to being double-crossed and betrayed. And this amount of dedication is as a result of losing someone of utmost value. Where have we seen this before?
Let me guess. You're doing it for her, aren't you? For her.
That's right. Doesn't Big Boss do the whole thing about MSF, Outer Heaven, and Zanzibar Land in memory of the boss's last wishes or how he interpreted them? And look how easy it is to manipulate Claire. Notice when the bomb goes off, the phone disconnects quite some time before that bomb goes off, with no sound of any previous explosion. And Claire doesn't realize Frederick's betrayal until she sees the phone off the hook.
There's a time bomb here. It's already too late to stop it. We'll have another biohazard if this thing...
On the surface level, just stop and think for a moment how stupid this makes Claire look.
There's a time bomb here. It's already too late to stop it.
I am standing next to the time bomb. The timer says T-minus 100 seconds. You must get out of there, Claire. Of course I'm sure. This time bomb is shaped like a grandfather clock. That is why instead of going tick 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 tick, the timer is going gong. I can't even throw it out the window because it is so heavy. Claire, you must get out of there. What? Why aren't I leaving? Because, you know, I'm legally blind. Blind man does not know what the fire exit is.
Never saw this coming.
Do you see now, on a surface level, how stupid this makes Claire look? Without the emotionally invested angle, you would only conclude that Claire Redfield, who has survived 2 biohazards, is an absolute idiot. But now we know that is not the story being told. She blindly trusted Neil and Frederick in the context of Terra Save. She needs to be right about the people she trusts for Terra Save because she cannot accept that her act of redemption that has been going on for so many years, it has a mistake. And speaking of Revelations 2, I missed this in Revelations 2 when I made my previous video. It's a bit subtle, but throughout the gameplay, you can see that Claire is hyper-focused, but is trying not to think about something painful. What gave this away is that from time to time, there are subtle references to Steve in a way that only makes sense to her and no one else. For example,
Are you gonna use that?
It's more reliable than any person.
If you say so.
and the fact that Moira reacts that way, indicating that she has no idea of the context of that line, means that this reference only makes sense to Claire. And remember the CODE Veronica reference rule? These references only make sense to Claire. And Revelations 2, it is filled with references to CODE Veronica. The fact that Claire Redfield starts the game on the floor of a prison cell, just like CODE Veronica, she and her companion are involved in sending out a distress message, just like CODE Veronica. She finds herself on a remote island. An island, keep that in mind. Just like CODE Veronica sending out a distress message from an island. And by the way, take a very close look at Claire's facial expression when she realizes that she is on an island.
Oh, God. What is this place?
Going back to Monologue of Claire, did you see how many times Claire referenced an island, whereas Steve did not die on an island? And it's not like Claire knew where they were, otherwise she wouldn't have Moira sent out an SOS. So, the fact that she found herself on an island sending out an SOS, just like from Rockford Island, where an SOS was also sent out, is what set off this facial expression. She is reliving her nightmare. Even the name of the boss, Alex Wesker, probably a reference to Alexia Ashford and Albert Wesker from CODE Veronica, the only time both of them confronted Claire in the same biohazard. And all of this triggered by the death of a guy she knew for one day? Good Lord. Now there is no question in my mind that immediately after surviving the events of CODE Veronica, Claire started to go mad from depression. And one of my commenters suggested that by Revelations 2, Claire has regained her badass status. Really? This is your badass, everyone? A girl who has the strength to survive biohazard after biohazard, as if it's a regular day in the office. A girl who can fire weapons, solve puzzles, kill monsters, do all of the Terra Save work, but who does not have the strength to come to terms with Steve's death. A girl who 13 years after the death of a guy that she knew only for one day, who died confessing his love for her, can't even audibly say his name? Look, just before Claire opens her eyes, she actually tries to say something, but it's not audible. I can't lip read, but perhaps she said Steve or she said something with a V or an F in it as the last syllable. She did this non-audible speech in CODE Veronica as well. No, people, this is objectively a broken woman who has not put herself back together yet. The question now is, just how badly was she broken, and just how much did she love him too? Furthermore, Capcom is also hinting at this by Claire's treatment. Notice in that list in Revelations 2, there is no Steve. Claire, in her canonical appearances after Code Veronica X, being Survivor 2, being Degeneration, being Revelations 2, and being Death Island, Claire never says the name Steve. Capcom is keeping this name away from her deliberately. Sorry for the digression, but back to Degeneration and more irrefutable proof of this. So after the explosion, Claire is injured. Leon and Angela arrive at the facility and go to fight Curtis. Leon helps Claire out a little bit, and Claire chooses to go to a control room to help. This is the best she can do, considering her temporary injury and no first aid spray bottles lying around.
Oh shit, now what's gonna happen?
No!
When Claire hears the sirens that sound like self-destruct sequence sirens, notice once again she gives this startled, involuntary reaction. We saw this previously in this movie, that when something reminds her of Steve, she gives this involuntary reaction. For me, I figured it out pretty much immediately. Watch these clips and let me know if you figured it out as well. How is this a reference to the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche?
We have to get out of here immediately. Can you unlock it from the inside?
No, I can't. Chris, there should be a self-destruct system somewhere. If you activate it, all the electronic locks might be deactivated.
This facility will detonate in 5 minutes. All doors are now unlocked.
You made it!
Of course.
If you still didn't get it, here is the reference. The last time she heard a siren like that in a biohazard was the last time she ever saw Steve, even as a corpse. Now you understand that line, my sad farewell to Steve. That painful farewell, referred to in the superlative, the worst way in the English version of the Monologue of Claire, that painful farewell could have only happened when the self-destruct sequence was initiated and the doors unlocked and she heard that siren. This makes it reference number 8, the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. Furthermore, notice the last thing she says immediately before hearing this siren.
Oh shit, now what's gonna happen?
All determined, focus, high adrenaline, mind on the task completely. Then, a mere siren that sounds like self-destruct sequence sirens derailed her thinking entirely from the important task at hand, and she had to visibly shake off whatever memory that surfaced in her mind to return to focusing on the task at hand. Watch both these scenes again without the middle part.
Oh shit, now what's gonna happen?
Over the death of a guy she knew for one day? And initially I thought this was it, until I caught one detail, and this involves storytelling through directing. And if you've seen my Cole Phelps video, you will know that there is something called storytelling through directing. Notice Capcom did not zoom in on speakers indicating sound, but they zoomed in on flashing lights and then panned to Claire's traumatized memory surfacing, as if she was involuntarily reminiscing about something she did not want to. I'll be honest, this one actually confused me a little bit, but knowing the pattern, I went back to the cutscenes of Code Veronica and just to see whether this is somehow a reference. And oh boy, it is a reference. Watch these cutscenes again and notice the lighting pattern at this time, keeping in mind that this is when the self-destruct system is active, the doors unlocked, and this is the last time she ever saw Steve, even as a corpse.
What are we gonna do?
Okay, turn the key clockwise simultaneously on 3. I'll keep her busy. Just go for the emergency elevator.
Chris, but...
I can take care of this. Just go.
Do you see? The last time she saw even flashing lights of that nature, coupled with a sound like that, was the last time she ever saw Steve. She remembers down to the lighting pattern. Now, some of you may say that, oh, this reaction is because she was injured on her left leg. To that, I say that not only is she not looking at her leg, not only does the camera not pan in or even focus on her leg, but she seems to be doing fine the very next scene, putting weight on that left leg. Almost right after that, when Claire is trying to disable the system.
Disable the system? There's gotta be a way.
She pauses for a bit and swiftly turns around, as if responding to a sound from a specific direction, as if she heard something or someone, then realizes it was all in her head, and then continues with the task at hand. Again, something surfaced in her mind in that situation that derailed her thinking from such an important task at that moment. Capcom distinctly put this there.
There's gotta be a way.
Once again, on the surface, it makes no sense. And I'll admit, this one actually took some thinking from my part and going back to Code Veronica again and again. And yes, this is a reference to the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. And by God, this is a very depressing one. First of all, keep in mind, I keep bringing this up because this is very important. Steve died 7 years ago from this biohazard, and she knew Steve only for 1 day. Here is the reference. Notice all of these cutscenes from Code Veronica X. Steve finds Chris, gives idea to send coordinates as a distress message. Claire sends it through Leon. Claire needs the Lugers. Steve gets it for her. Claire saves his life. Claire is being crushed by a snatcher. Steve saves her life with Lugers. Steve exchanges the Lugers for better weapons. Claire raises the bridge. Steve flies the plane. Steve finds Australian research base. Claire suggests breaking the wall. Steve causes the gas leak. Claire fixes the gas leak. Steve saves Claire's life. Did you notice all of these problems Claire and Steve solved together the last time she was in a biohazard? And now, the only time she's in a biohazard and she has to solve a puzzle type problem in a biohazard, she acts as if she could have sworn she heard someone, and she swiftly turns around. Most likely Steve's voice. Because notice, she turned around and looked in a specific direction, as if someone is suggesting a solution to her problem from behind her. And no matter how much you turn up the volume, you cannot hear anything. So it's not a response to a random sound. And Claire has dealt with enough T-virus zombies, the zombies that you see in this movie, to know that zombies can barely open doors, let alone operate elevators. So it is definitely not the sound from a zombie. This only means that whatever she heard was all in her head. But whatever she heard, it was something very important to her. Let me recreate this in a way that makes more sense.
There's gotta be a way.
Claire.
Nisa! Hayate Nisa!
Please look up the definition of a hallucination. Folks, this is a hallucination. She was hallucinating. 7 years down the line, and she is still hallucinating? People, I take this back. In the immediate aftermath of CODE Veronica, she was this close to being broken. I take that back. She was indeed broken. Steve's death mentally broke her. Now I ask myself, this poor girl, how does she sleep at night?
Nightmares for the rest of her life.
And what does she say right after?
I know what Leon would do.
This actually confused and even angered some of her so-called fans.
I know what Leon would do.
What Leon would do? What about what you would do? What happened to your confidence, Claire? You survived 2 biohazards as well, right? Oh, that's right. She views CODE Veronica as her failure, not her success. Needless to say, this is reference number 9, the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. What did Steve mean to Claire? There is irrefutable proof that Claire loved him so much that watching him die caused her to start going insane from depression, and she never came to terms with losing Steve, even counting Death Island 17 years after he died. This is why I used the song from Linkin Park, because of that line, crawling in my skin, these wounds, they will not heal. So, to sum this up so far, she remembers chronologically the words he said, the sound she heard, the assistance she had, the remarks he made. Did you actually think that Capcom would make a reference to Leon's previous biohazard and not reference Claire's last biohazard? They did. Sorry for the digression again, but back to Degeneration. Man, that scene, the G-Virus Curtis in the picture. Really? And you guys have the audacity to laugh at Steve's death? You guys laugh at that, but you give this G-Virus Curtis picture scene a pass? And a G-Virus that turns into a monster obsessed with impregnating other human beings?
It sees you as a breeding tool.
First of all, that sounds like a theme you might come across Japanese adult animation. But I'm surprised no one that I've come across on YouTube made fun of this concept in this way.
It sees you as a breeding tool.
I'm gonna make love even when I'm dead. My body might get cold, but it's always hot in my bed. Make love, don't you be afraid. Just because my heart ain't beating, it don't mean you won't get laid.
I don't like it when men play rough.
So the big bad monster is dead, and we get a final confrontation between Claire and Senator Davis.
Where's Frederick?
Dead. No vaccine data, no nothing. The same as Raccoon City.
What?
Frederick said it. Even you couldn't convince countries to invest in the development of the insufficiently researched G-Virus.
What are you talking about?
You know, at first, I didn't suspect you were connected with this terrorism, if for no other reason than you were in the airport terminal when the event occurred. But you had a motive for causing all this. Stocks. Wilpharma stock tanked. because of our accusations. You were afraid that the situation would turn out the same as it did for Umbrella Corporation, so you needed an excuse to use the vaccine.
Now, wait a minute. Yes, I'm a stockholder, and Wilpharma should regain the public's faith after this incident. But there's no way in hell I would support terrorism to ensure that. First of all, what is the G virus? I've never even heard of it.
I know you ordered Frederick to dispose of the G virus when you called him.
I told him not to show you anything more than you needed to see. That was it.
Okay, everyone, let's break down just how stupid that explanation is. She literally says she did not think that the senator was involved with the biohazard that happened in the airport because the senator was right there. But what caused her to change her mind was Frederick's flimsy explanation coupled with the work she does for Terra Save. And what is her grand theory of how the senator is involved in all of this?
Stocks. Wilpharma stock tanked because of our accusations.
So, according to Claire, the senator staged the biohazard in the airport where the senator's own bodyguards got infected in front of Claire, where the senator begged Claire for help, not knowing that Claire is a Raccoon City survivor. And don't ask how, somehow, according to Claire, the senator arranged for a plane full of zombies to crash specifically into that terminal when the senator is there. All because of Wilpharma's stocks plummeting because of Terra Save's accusations. And need I remind you, despite of which, Wilpharma not only created that research facility that Claire walked out from, but was also able to create a US government-level stockpile of vaccines, which not only got created, but went through what we call in pharmacology phase 3 trials with tremendous success. Meaning, all that Terra Save did, it had zero effect on Wilpharma because Wilpharma were secretly backed by the government. Here is the line from Frederick that hooked her into this narrative.
The senator is a member of the special committee that decided to bomb Raccoon City.
And under this narrative, Claire will only believe that Frederick is the good guy, and as a result of which, the senator must be the bad guy. Forget the fact that Frederick never once mentioned that he acquired the G virus and destroyed a majority of it, and with the remaining little bit, worked on a vaccine for the G virus. Frederick never mentions about destroying any of the G virus. That should have made it very clear that he was up to something. Look, people, just how obsessed she is with this narrative, with her own faith in people who she thinks are allies for fighting her cause. She did the same thing with Neil and dismissed Moira's observations until she saw hard evidence. On a surface level, I just said, you poor gullible fool. How the hell do you work for Terra Save? Yo, Steve, I know the gaming world hates you for your portrayal and your performance in CODE Veronica, but you fell in love with this idiot? Don't you realize that her stupidity is actually making you look even worse than how bad you already look in the Resident Evil universe?
Shut up! I don't want to talk about it!
But on a deeper level, I have demonstrated Claire needs to be right about this. This is her psychological frame of mind. This is her act of redemption for her own conscience. This is her apology to Steve, something she has been doing for 17 years. When Claire finds out the way she does that Frederick was the bad guy, here is my surface level response.
It can't be.
Bravo! The last horse finally crosses the finish line.
And that whole ending where Claire playfully nags Leon like a younger sister, and Claire goes off in an Indian taxi-looking car, which she was told was a limousine. Whatever, man. Whatever. It was also nice to see that Tricell bought up Wilpharma in the end. And I think we saw a bit of Hunk at the very end of the movie, so that's a good touch. Here are the other three references of the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. Because in her mind, the last time she was the aggressor, the last time she put herself into potentially going through a biohazard just to find Chris, it came at the expense of losing Steve. And given how, whilst in a biohazard, almost everything has the potential to remind her of losing Steve, a memory she is trying to suppress for 17 plus years, it is obvious that the reason she did not join BSA or Stratcom, organizations whose members are expected to be the aggressors and go into biohazards to take care of the biohazards. She did not join such a group because she is trying not to think about Steve, because she is suppressing the memory. As even involuntarily thinking about him is so painful to Claire, as shown several times in this movie. And in overall Resident Evil lore, notice Leon talks about Ada in the ending of Resident Evil 4. Chris talks about Pierce's sacrifice in Death Island. Jill Valentine talks about her nightmare and working with Wesker under his influence in Death Island. Sherry Birkin talks about Raccoon City in Resident Evil 6 to Jake Mueller. Even Sheva in Resident Evil 5 talks about her traumatic past. Even Moira Burton told Claire about her traumatic childhood incident because Claire acknowledges it in Revelations 2. When Steve died, Claire was seen crying harder than any of the main protagonists, meaning that it definitely traumatized her. To all you Resident Evil Claire Redfield so-called fans who still think she's a badass, answer this question. When everyone else manages to talk about their traumatic incidents in their past related to biohazards, why is Claire the only one who can't even mention his name, let alone talk about him? I saw a YouTuber call her Busty Claire. Really? Okay, let's just do a bit of a comparison.
Ayane. Nisa.
Yeah, that's Busty. What you see in Resident Evil Degeneration is definitely not Busty Claire. I actually call her Bulky Claire. Didn't anyone notice that this girl in Degeneration has a slightly larger chest and a much larger waist compared to the Claire you found in Code Veronica X? In fact, I think I came across somewhere on the internet that Claire looks like she's pregnant. And we know that Claire doesn't have any children. Even the YouTuber Yeti112 made this as a joke in a parody of Resident Evil Degeneration.
Hi. It's been a long time. You've gotten a little fat.
I hate you too.
Look, she even has puffy cheeks and forearm fat. And the thing about not being able to button up her shirt all the way up, you notice she's wearing layers of clothing, right? And her upper jacket thing is already quite folded up, meaning it's not even stretched all the way. So there's nothing stopping her from buttoning up, really. And just to reiterate, weight gain is a sign of depression. If you've actually seen people go through depression, I've actually seen this myself. They actually put on quite a significant amount of weight at times. Didn't she also arrive at the airport sleep deprived? Is she afraid to go to sleep because she is going to have those recurring nightmares again? Total count in this movie is 12. Here are 3 from Revelations 2. Resident Evil Death Island included 16 references to the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. Overall, though, man, what a letdown. The animation was crap, the story was boring and cliche, the focus was too much on Leon and Angela in a way that most people understood, and on Claire Redfield, for some reason, in a way, evidently only I understood to this level. The action? I didn't even talk about the action because it was way too played out, man. And the parts about Claire Redfield, people, that was painful to watch. You had to see a mentally broken girl be psychologically tortured for 90 minutes. You really feel bad for her. And people still didn't get it. And this was despite Capcom actually executing it slightly better compared to CODE Veronica. Because unlike CODE Veronica, where some of Claire's reactions were in the background, whereas something else was happening in the foreground, in this movie, much of Claire's reactions, Claire is the only person in the shot. And this is also part due to the Western misconception that Claire Redfield is essentially a promiscuous babysitter with a gun. The reality is she is extremely far from that. And shout out to Will from Raccoon City Cinema, who found this out after translating the Japanese strategy guide of Resident Evil 2, confirming what I discovered about Claire's character the hard way, that in reality she is one of the most good girl characters in Resident Evil protagonists. So much to the point that only Claire Redfield is confirmed to be believing in a higher power. People, I understand, okay? Steve and Claire barely knew each other. How could they fall in love with each other? But this is the unifying explanation that accounts for all of Claire's strange behaviors. Without this, the only other explanation is that Claire Redfield, who survived 2 biohazards, is an absolute idiot, is gullible, and is a coward. And we know that is not the case. The reality is that Claire is trying to suppress something. And this PTSD angle is the explanation that accounts for all of her strange behaviors. Overall score for this movie, 6 out of 10. I would have given it 5 out of 10 or even lower, but Laura Bailey nailed her voice acting. Alison Court didn't even try. Paul Mercier, not only does he sound like he doesn't want to be there, okay? His animation looks like his animation doesn't want to be there either. Paul Mercier is probably thinking, man, I was in God of War 2, one of the greatest games on the greatest selling console of all time. I'm better than this. Fuck Resident Evil. I'm out of here.
You stop right there!
Huh? Oh, hey, Bolly Critic. I haven't seen you in a while. How you been? What's wrong, man?
You are giving this movie 6 out of 10? Why? Because there is Indian element in this movie? You are just jealous.
Bro, this movie wasn't even that good. Trust me, it deserves a 6 out of 10.
You are just jealous. You know what internet say? Huh? Internet saying this is best Resident Evil movie. You know why? I will tell you. Okay, I am intelligent. I will tell you. Because there is Indian element in this. Okay? The 2 people Indian. Okay? The biohazard part of it in India. Because of Indian influence, this movie is the best Resident Evil movie. You are just jealous, Mr. Bengal Dragon, because there is nothing Bengali or Bangladeshi in this. You are just jealous.
Bro, what are you talking about? Trust me, this movie isn't even that good.
You are just jealous, admit it. Even the 2 people, Rani and Auntie Chawla, okay? 2 Indian names, most likely from Punjab, okay? They had Indian actors in this movie. So just admit it and we can move on.
What are you talking about? They're not even voiced by Indians.
What? What do you think? It's not voiced by Indians?
Bro, you don't believe me? Check the end credits yourself. They're not voiced by Indians.
You are just headblind, Mr. Bengal Dragon. Okay, there's nothing Bengali in it. That's why you are angry. Okay? You go back to Cincinnati where there is some Bengali in the football. Okay? Let me check. I will check. You don't know anything. I will check. Move.
All right, man. Be my guest. Here, check it out for yourself. What is this? Move. I will check. Okay. Where is the end credit? They're not Indian? They're not Indian! How dare you, Capcom? How dare you? You are using Indian plot, Indian people, Indian elements, Indian melodrama, Indian taxi on top of a mountain. Even one of your protagonists, Claire Redfield, most Indian of all protagonists, closest thing to Karishma Kapoor. And you are not paying any respect to India? How dare you, Capcom? Even in CODE Veronica, the most Indian of all Resident Evil, forget what the Bengal Dragon says. It is reeking with Bollywood script writing. Okay? This line, the actual dialogue is,
as a surviving member of STARS, I have to finish this.
Remember your promise.
But in an Indian context, the better dialogue is, एक हिंदुस्तानी पुलिस अफसर होने के नाते मुझे अपना शपथ निभाना पड़ेगा. ठीक है, लेकिन अपना वादा नहीं भूलना. Capcom has a history of disrespecting India. Okay, did you know Dalsim from Street Fighter, the most legendary Indian of all fighting games, is not voiced by an Indian? And in the Street Fighter EX series, they took it to another level. There is a fighter called Darun Mistar. He is modeled after the great Indian wrestler, the Great Gama. He is apparently an Indian wrestler who is bodyguard to an Arab princess called Pulam Porna. Okay? An Indian is working for an Arab as a bodyguard. An Indian working for an Arab. An Indian working for an Arab. Capcom, you made Darun Mistar to troll all of the Indian brothers and sisters suffering in the Middle East. Just look at Street Fighter EX3. Okay, look at the meteor tag combo. The Arab princess uses the Indian bodyguard like a trampoline, literally putting the Indian under the Arab foot. That is it. I am done. Okay, I demand retribution, and I will get our retribution in the name of our champion leader, Mr. Modi. I will ensure that we get the justice. And after this, I will make sure milk will be milk, water will be water. Okay, and I will use the Indian traditional weapon to do so. Ah! Where'd he go? Well, guess he just ran off. Well, I guess I gotta end this now. All right. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Okay, now I took another stab at that Resident Evil music video featuring Linkin Park crawling. Okay, focusing on Claire Redfield's trauma. After watching this whole movie again, and now given that I am armed with a bit more of the depth of Claire's trauma, I completed this video. So ignore all that rules that I set, just as long as you don't use Darkside Chronicles or Infinite Darkness or the Stephanie Panisalo Claire. Okay, I'm good with that. So please watch until the very end. This is the completed music video of the trauma of Claire Redfield. Thank you very much for watching. Please hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons, as it really helps this channel not only grow, but would go a long way in helping this legally blind YouTube content creator to remain motivated to continue putting out a lot of content with a lot of hard work on this channel. The music video will be right after the end credits. Please watch until the very end. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.
I did what I thought was right.
It wasn't.
Get away from me!
Please, help me.
There's something inside me that pulls beneath the surface, consuming, confusing. This lack of self-control I fear is never ending, controlling. I can't seem to find myself again. My walls are closing in.
Not a sense of confidence. I'm convinced that there's just too much pressure to take.
I felt this way before. So insecure. Nightmares for the rest of my life. Crawling in my skin. These wounds, they will not heal. Fear is how I fall. Confusing what is real. Discomfort endlessly has pulled itself upon me.
Are you gonna use that?
It's more alive than any person.
Reacting against my will, I stand beside my own reflection. It's haunting.
We'll get out of here together.
To find myself again. My walls are closing in.
Not a sense of confidence. I'm convinced that there's just too much pressure to take.
I felt this way before. So insecure.
I love you.
Got you now.
Crawling in my skin. These wounds, they will not heal. Fear is how I fall. Confusing what is real. Crawling in my skin. These wounds, they will not heal. Fear is how I fall. Confusing what is real.
Are you